Good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Raising Excellence, one of the most valuable hours of your day. I'm Deidre, the MC for today's adventure. This week, we are continuing our discussion on the special event for this week, which is dedicated to International Women's Day. So today's show our topic is moving towards equal rights. Now, let me introduce our awesome team. We have Agnieszka, our psychosomatic illuminator,
Hello.
Willow, our trauma consultant,
Hello.
Michael, our community conductor.
Hello, everybody. Thinking about changing that, by the way.
That's okay. I'm sure you're going to come up with a fantastic one. Awesome title. And we have our special guest, Amanda Price, from the Autonomy course and Interactive School of Life. Hey, Amanda.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
If you're viewing live or have any questions, please feel free to put any input into our media streams. So opening the floor up for our discussion, moving towards equal rights. What can we do now?
I had a question.
Oh, hang on. Before we start, I'd like to introduce Amanda a little bit more. Well, I'd like Amanda to tell us in a couple sentences what her specialty is, because I know it's exciting and I know it has to do all with communication and connecting people with each other. Amanda?
I'm happy to do that, Agnieszka. Thank you. Yeah. For the last 2.5 years, I've been dedicating my time to learning and living and sharing empathic communication. And by that, what I mean is learning ways to maintain connection in dialogue. And that also means a consciousness in which we are really seeking to stay connected or to reconnect when we find ourselves in discord with others. So it's a consciousness, it's a set of tools and processes and skills that really is just designed to keep humans in connection, to be happier and to solve our problems a little bit more easily, and to build trust and maintain integrity and ethics. Yeah, that's about what it is for me. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, so this week we've been talking about feminism versus femininity and how to be an independent woman. And today we're moving into the whole equal rights thing. So I think Amanda is a great guest to have for this topic.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Okay. Willow, what's your question?
So I wanted to start out with the question about moving towards equal rights. My question is, what rights does one gender have that another gender does not?
Well, Willow, I guess my first question is, are you talking about man's rights or, positive law or natural rights? Natural law. There are a lot of differences there.
Is there a way to quickly summarize the differences? Because I'm not exactly sure what to label it as.
Absolutely, yeah. For me, positive law or man's rights are those that are defined and written by we humans.
Okay.
As opposed to what happens naturally on the earth with us as humans as part of it. There are natural consequences to whatever we do. And for me, those natural consequences are a description of natural law, whereas positive law can change from moment to moment based on what our legislatures decide they're willing to put into, the law books at any given time.
So would positive law be similar or the same as saying positive rights? Because I do know that term.
I don't. What's that?
Positive rights, I know the term, but not well enough to actually verbalize what it means. I guess it's I guess I don't know how to describe it.
Well, let me throw out an example for you today, okay? Today, so I'm a mom of 3 children in the household. I have a 6-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an almost 16-year-old. And there's pressure through man's law or positive law, that which is written by other people, around what our rights are and what we do with our bodies. So it could be vaccinations, it could be abortion, birth control, so on and so forth, right? So that's one side of the spectrum. On the other side, if I am outside chopping wood with an axe and I accidentally miss the wood and I hit my wrist, I'm going to slice my wrist open and it's going to bleed. And there's no argument around that. It is just going to happen. That is what happens in the natural world. So I wonder if that helps distinguish what I'm talking about between man's law or positive law and natural law.
So
yes, it does.
So natural versus man-made, basically, man-created.
I was referring to positive law, as you say. I was a little thrown off because I thought that they were like completely separate, because I don't think that man's law is at the very least loosely based on natural law, I would say.
Like
it has
10,000 years ago, maybe.
But it has principles that are based in, or is supposed to be, try and be based in natural law. That was actually my question was, what positive rights in positive law does one gender have that another gender doesn't?
Maybe I can add something here, and that is the whole idea of law is essentially just to create justice, right? Where people get a fair shake, or supposedly when people do something wrong to somebody else, something is done to equal it out, right? And that's essentially what the law is all about, is really trying to keep justice and trying to facilitate justice. So, a lot of things that have happened in the past, 50 years or so, certainly in the United States, when it comes to like women's rights, for example, there's been a lot of things that have kind of created circumstances where there does seem to be rights being given out to certain people, certain groups of people, that other groups of people don't have, and certainly a recognition of things that maybe are kind of grandfathered in, but aren't necessarily recognized. So I would say a lot of the men's, what I think people would identify as men's rights are things that are kind of just assumed, whereas a lot of the other groups are getting these things written into law.
I think that is the difference, because when you write it into law, it's a different kind of pressure. I hesitate to say that one gender has more rights legally by positive law than another does. But I would say that there's a lot of pressure on both genders for different reasons to not exercise those rights.
Willow, give us an example of what you're talking about, and maybe we can take that as a thread.
Well, such as like men and women, I haven't found any rights that differ between men and women. I have found preferences that differ. I have found that people treat other genders differently based on their preference and their own personal ideas. But I don't see a man or a woman going into a doctor's office and asking to have something, done. And they're like, oh no, we can't do that because you're a woman and we need someone else's permission, or you can't do that because you're a man. You do see that happening, but you see it happening as in like, oh, you joined the military, so therefore you have to go to this specific doctor. You don't have a choice. But I hesitate to say that men or women have more rights than each other legally. Now, what our society is pressuring us to do is a different story.
Yeah, I resonate with that, Willow. And if I may just share a very quick story around sort of the ideology and the biases and the societal pressure that doesn't manifest exactly as a law, but that happens nevertheless. I have a very close dear friend who's having some medical issues, and she purchased a specific kind of test, which was done and then was held by her provider. And she decided that she wanted to get a second opinion about what her condition was. And so she asked her first provider to share the copy of the test results that she had paid for. And they said, happy to share it with you the next time you come in for our next level of treatment. And she was like, no, I want my test results now. I paid for them. You did them. They exist. I'd actually like to share them with a different provider for a second opinion. And there was so much pushback. And her response to that was, okay, I need to have my husband call them and ask for the test results. That was where her mind went based on how she was, all of the background, right? It would never have occurred to me to go to my spouse and say, oh, you need to ask for it instead of me because I'm a female, they're saying no to me. But if my husband comes and asks for it, of course they're going to say yes.
It's funny. Eric would have me ask. He'd be like, okay, they're not listening to me. You talk to them.
Exactly.
I want to hear, did it work? Did that work?
Yeah, I was going to ask, did it?
It didn't. It didn't at all. And that was the surprising thing. They denied him as well. And then she asked her mother to call, who was part of the medical establishment. And within 30 seconds, they said, of course, yes, we'll give you the results.
Because she was part of the...
culture. Yeah. It was just so interesting that she went to her husband thinking, oh, because he's a man, they're going to say yes to him. Well, because I'm a woman, they're going to say no to me. Hearing that story was just heartbreaking to me. It wouldn't be my experience, but it totally has been her experience her whole life. So maybe that's just an example of how this happens in real life in certain cultures and societies and in certain mindsets.
I can relate to that. I also have a myriad of health issues that require me to have medical records transferred from doctor to doctor to doctor. It is a pain in the ass. I'm actually still waiting. I waited over a year to get medical records. They faxed it 4 times, and supposedly, apparently, the fax machine doesn't work anymore.
Oh,
they never got the fax machine. They never got the fax. And then finally I called them within an hour. I got the correct number, the correct files, got them sent over. And I called my doctor, and I was really frustrated with my doctor because he had basically triggered a PTSD incident. He basically listened to what I had to say and then told me that nothing I said mattered and he was going to do what he was going to do. And I just wasted his time basically. So the next time I was like, I'm not coming here again. I don't want to see you again. My friend actually had the same doctor, and she said the same thing happened to her. They're withholding my medical records. That I told them that I would come pick up my medical records that I had faxed to them, that I finally got faxed over. And I also would like my medical records from the sleep study that they pushed me into when I barely had, enough insurance to cover it. And they told me that it would cost me, my power might go out. Lights just flickered. The universe is like, stop talking.
It's okay. It takes
Add to
me
the
2 days ago.
Wait, is it a full moon? It's not a full moon. Okay, we're good.
No, it was on Sunday.
No, not yet.
You think I like wolves out of a, preference, but. But yeah, they withheld my medical records. They told me that it's $50 to go pick up my medical records. And I was like, are you serious?
That's the printing costs.
But it was funny because the previous time I told him that no other doctor had given me my sleep studies, and he printed it out for me on the spot and handed it to me in his office.
Yeah, I think that's how he can go around those rules that they're supposed to adhere to.
Yeah.
So.
But I've noticed that same thing happening when I take my car into the shop because I'm female. I don't know how to explain, and a lot of times they'll just like assume what I'm saying, or a couple of times they've actually asked me to call my husband. I'm like, no, he's busy. That's why you're dealing with me.
See, I found it really
go ahead, Deirdre. No, go ahead.
I was going to say I found it interesting that your friend went to her mother. So I'm looking at rental properties at the moment. And so I have 4 kids and I'm a single mom, and I'm competing with people who are, probably in their 40s and all their children are out of home. That's my competition. And so I rang my mom and I'm like, look, can I just write you in application? It'll be fine. But she has the idea. She can understand why that would help me.
Yeah. Yeah. In my friend's case, her mother had been, her career was in the medical establishment. So she had the language. She knew the words to speak to get done what needed to be done. And they responded to her very well. So it really wasn't, in this case, the actual experience wasn't gender biased. And yet I just brought it up because my friend's head went immediately to, oh, they're not listening to me because I'm a woman, so I have to engage my husband.
And that is something serious that many, many women in our society right now all deal with. And that's why I'm very hesitant to say, we have separate rights, because the reality of the situation is we don't have separate rights. We have equal rights. Why are women and men in some cases, but different cases, why are we prompted to defer that to someone else?
I do have an example of a car situation, so I'll say that story after you finish.
Yeah, I just had one last thing. I forgot it.
I feel rotten now.
No, it's all good.
No,
it'll come back.
Rotten. Okay. Just by how you was talking about how men do experience it as well. The IT guy that made my PC for me, he was telling me about the situation about people ripping him off. So he had to get his car to get it fixed. It wasn't even to get fixed. Actually, it was just a regular, maintenance, yearly maintenance. And they rang him up and they're like, oh no, that's going to be $1,200. He goes, but it's just the maintenance. Oh no, needs doing. Oh, okay. He paid the $1,200. And then they're like, no, well, when we did that, we found out that it actually needed this stuff, and it ended up costing him like $5,000 to get his car back. They just ripped him off because he didn't,
yeah, but that's not a gender issue, right? Like, how is that a gender disparity?
I was just agreeing with what Willow was saying, that it's there. I don't know. Maybe they just saw him as as less than. Somehow, because he wasn't physically, I don't know, buff.
Imposing. Yeah.
That could be entirely true, and I think that's kind of what we're picking up on. But I maybe I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like that would upset a guy as much as it would upset a girl. I feel like guys would be like,
hear from the guy now.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good idea.
Yes.
Michael, speak up.
I'm not exactly sure what to say at this point. I will say that, in regard to roles, there are roles that men play better than women, and in some circumstances, and in the old history of community and so forth, men played those roles, and women played other roles. And I think that that was a distinct way of really solidifying community, where people played particular roles. Those things were unique to them, and they were effectively recognized for being useful in those particular areas. What we've done now, and just talking about these different things, is one in which we're all individuals. We don't have any community to rely on for anything, like, for example, housing. We can't just talk to our friends and say, hey, I'm looking for a place to stay. Does anybody know anybody, kind of thing? No, you can't do it like that. You've got to file some form with some office somewhere, and then let them judge you as to, are you worthy or not. That's not community. That's completely absent of community. And effectively, us being conditioned to try and live in a society like that is probably part of the problem that we're having with our society, is because we don't have community. We don't have that element that is really what we need, that social structure that supports us and allows us to feel safe and feel like we're part of something larger.
And I like that, because I know now I'm just going to personalize what you said. So on paper, being a single mom with 4 kids, in comparison to a couple in their 40s, 2 full-time jobs with no kids, I don't look good in comparison. But if they got to know me and they knew who I was, and that, yeah, I really actually do need a rental accommodation, that's different. That's like taking me as a whole, not just taking me just in my little bits.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's like the difference between, the metadata versus the holistic view of anybody, whether, it's you, Deirdre, or anybody else. It's taking the little bits and making assumptions based on, maybe past experience, but also stereotypes, versus digging deep and being curious about every single individual's unique situation, and hoping to provide value and seek solutions that work for everybody.
Well, I think it's also that communication level. Like, we, because we're so occupied with all the other things that we do in our lives and all the distractions that we have, we never really spend any time communicating with each other to actually know what the strengths and weaknesses are of the people around us. And because of that, we are really in a weak position.
So can you talk a little bit about NVC? I know both you and Amanda are fans. How would NVC make that communication easier or more straightforward? And what is it?
Those are some big questions, Agnieszka.
You have 3 minutes.
Those are the only time you get. There are no simple questions.
Michael, should I start, or are you compelled to share?
Well, I would just say that I think we are in a situation, I think, as a society where everybody is being divided and conquered. And so, like, men versus women, black versus white, and all these other differences that, Republicans versus Democrats and all this other stuff. So we're always kind of encouraged to be on the defensive for anybody coming up with any kind of trigger words that might, demonstrate that they're opposed to us. But that is really where the communication level needs to be enhanced, because all these potential areas of conflict are actually areas of, more than likely, misunderstandings or miscommunications. And so, like, being able to accurately communicate my intentions to somebody else is something that's really important. And then certainly being able to take on a circumstance where people are potentially in a conflicted situation and be able to see the opportunity to learn something from it and have that kind of a mindset is, I think, what NVC is ultimately about.
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate that summation, Michael. And for me, it's really about simply a way in which I communicate that demonstrates a commitment to wanting to work through things with others, to sticking with it even when it's hard, and to be very honest, but to be honest with care, and to honor the fact that I am one person and I have feelings and I have values and I have needs that are really important, and so does everybody else. And so if I can hold my needs and my feelings with care and respect those of others, and in doing so come to agreements and solutions that work for everybody, it being a win-win, that's what it's all about. And so NVC provides, a process, it provides tools, it provides skills that enable that to happen. It's really about connection, that it's about staying in or rebuilding connection when it's broken to get through the hardest things, as opposed to supporting what Michael had described before, that divisiveness, where the minute you start to judge or diagnose or evaluate, the disconnection starts. And it's so much more difficult to creatively and effectively solve problems when you're disconnected. So let's do our best. And I'm speaking for me, I'm going to do my best to stay in connection with that other person, even when it's really uncomfortable for me. I'm going to take self-responsibility for my discomfort, and I'm going to work through it. And I'm going to try to do my best to stay with the other until we get through to something that works for both of us.
That was beautiful.
Awesome.
That was beautifully said. I love what you said about being honest, because that's a big thing for me, and it's something I struggle with because I want to deny my own crazy female feelings, because I've got it. I've got that crazy part. It's hard when you're trying to be honest with yourself, but in reality, you're just being really harsh with yourself. So being honest with care, I love that saying.
Well, that goes back to that thing that I always say: if you wouldn't say it to a 4-year-old, don't say it to yourself. And second, after that, how would you say it to a 4-year-old?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and one of the greatest gifts that I've discovered has been to recognize when I'm starting to judge and disconnect, or I'm starting to disconnect, and recognizing that, and then consciously deciding to choose to move to curiosity, because that's when we all learn, right? And that's when the door reopens, because the door has been shut the moment I start to disengage. I blame, I diagnose, I judge, the door shuts. But if I can reopen that door with curiosity, chances are I'm going to learn a whole lot more about the person, about the person's circumstances, and I might end up just naturally having a lot more empathy for the whole situation. And then we're like, oh yeah, we're just two human beings in conflict. Let's figure this out.
I learned a tactic in IFS, because working from self was the goal. Self is always characterized as a feeling of curiosity, first of all, compassion, a bunch of other C words, connectivity, all the things that you were talking about. And one way, we have another part called the figure it out part that comes in, and they try to analyze everything because they really want to figure it out for you. A practice is to be like, even in my own mind, especially when I'm dealing with my clients, I have to say, give me just a moment. I got a part in my head that I need to talk to. And I'll be like, all right, figure it out part. I know that you're here for a reason. You're really good at your job. And I really appreciate you coming back to try and figure this out. What I need you to do is wait until the end, until we have all the information, and then you have a way bigger box of information to play with, and I will just give it to you. Do you want that? Will that work? Okay, cool. Do you mind like sitting in the back or like leaving the room or something? And usually that part's like, yeah, cool. If the reward is I get more information, I get more of what I want. Yes, please.
And
we
it
don't have
benefits
to buy it.
everybody. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You put it on the shelf, you put it in the parking lot until it's time to come back to it.
Yeah. And that's the biggest fear of all these parts, is that once you put them up on the shelf, that you're not going to come back to them. That you're going to leave them there forever, and then they get really anxious, just like a small 4-year-old when they're like, go to your room, I'm never going to talk to you again, and they're like, but please talk to me, I'll do anything.
Yeah. So just
So
a quick shout out.
conditionality.
Just a quick shout out to Kelly, who is watching with Bob P. I presume that's Podolsky. And they said sorry they were late. But I don't think they were as late as now, because I hadn't had a chance to say that. But yes, welcome, Kelly. We love you.
Okay.
That's it. That was my whole contribution. I'm done.
I was leaning in towards the camera too, and then you started talking. I'm like,
yeah, I saw you. I'm just like, no, I'm going in first this time.
You can be like,
what
Sam,
I liked
no.
about no, then that kind of, I don't, no. I'm a grown up. We're grown ups here. And just take turns.
We are?
Or I'll just talk louder.
No one told me that.
That's what grown-ups do. They talk louder.
What I liked about what Amanda was saying was just to keep that relationship open. To like, okay, well, I'm going to, even though this is really uncomfortable and I don't like what you're saying and this making no sense right now, I'm just going to hold it and just keep going with it, because I know that at one point connection is going to come up. I really I like that, kind of not dropping the ball on the other person. And then if they do it as well, it's just, it looks like a really effective way to quickly resolve conflict or to make connection.
Nice.
Well, to bring this back around to the male feminine thing going on, or the topic that we're trying to discuss, isn't it interesting though that like the feminine approach to communication versus the male approach to communication is quite a bit different, and the feminine approach is kind of the communal approach versus the man, which is I think much more independent and single-minded.
Very directed. I notice.
I agree.
Like, I think you notice when the chicks are communicating, we generally kind of circle. The communication kind of circles around. Even though we might divert and we might kind of go off a bit, it does circle back around again. Have you ever noticed that when women talk?
He puts us on ignore before we get there. But women, what they do is they sort of do like this emotional dump that, oh my gosh, I feel this way, and these are all the times that I felt this way in the past. I felt like that 5 years ago with this one person, and then this other time I also felt this way, and it was with this person, and I'm feeling all these feelings, and oh, okay, now that they're all out, I'm feeling better. Thanks.
I think that's a community thing, because we have to be able to talk to each other and feel noticed and recognized. I think that can ease so many of the symptoms right off the bat, just having someone hear your story and witness it.
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Amanda?
I'd just like to follow on Willow's thread and say, for me, again, it goes back to the individual. I'm really hesitant to divide this between male and female. My husband gets very upset when he wants to share something and he's interrupted, whether it's by me or one of my children, because of a need for wanting to be heard and heard in full, yes. Right? And I find myself starting to listen, but then I start to get distracted. And if I try to interrupt to regain connection, it doesn't work. It's like, no, you can't interrupt me. And then I think to myself, okay, he's not wanting me to interrupt, but I'm not connected anymore. So I'm not listening anymore. I'm not getting all of the facts that he's trying to share with me. And that's disarming and disappointing. But then I circle back and recognize I don't have to remember every single fact and figure that he's telling me. What I have to do is be there for him and just be there and listen in an empathic way. It's in NVC, it's called this empathic presence. It's empathic silence. It's just being there with the other person as a compassionate witness. It's not about agreeing with them. It's not about taking on their own feelings, which has been a real disservice to NVC and the whole definition of empathy that I've been coming across for the last couple of years. Empathy does not mean you are taking on the experience and the feelings of others. It is really just being there as a non-judgmental, objective, but
witness,
careful, full of care, witness to somebody else's experience. And when I do that, and I get away from the head trash of, I have to follow everything that he's saying, like it's a class, you know, then everything works out okay, you know? And so I can't remember who said that, but I also really enjoy being able to just dump and say, this is what's going on. And I don't want a solution, which maybe if you're gonna extrapolate to a male-female thing, I think males in general will want to jump in with solutions as opposed to just listening and saying, oh, wow, that must have been a really hard day for you, huh? You must be feeling a lot of anxiety, or, you know, that must have been really disappointing for you. Sometimes that's what we want. And that in and of itself, knowing that we have been heard, just refills like our empathy bucket, you know? So I personally want to be really careful about not putting men and women into specific, I know we're talking about, you know, moving towards equal rights, but for me, it is a lot more individualized. And I really just want to honor each soul and understand where they're coming from, including my own.
Nice. Beautiful.
I wanted to bring this back to the original question. While I don't think this is a right, I think it is something that it personally perturbs me to no end. I hate women's pockets in their clothes. I hate them. I'm like, they make me so furious.
So I've been researching this.
Why do you expect us to carry so much stuff? If our pockets, I'm not done. This is a rant.
All right, sorry.
Why do you expect? I hate when someone's like, oh, do you have like something in your bag? And I'm like, no, I keep trying to downsize my bag, but it keeps just ending up like a stuffed pillow that I carry around, and I can't put anything more into it. And then I size down from that, and I can't fit my phone in my back pocket. I can't fit my phone. Like, I watch these men put their keys and their wallet and their phone and a
No, they're meant to sit
and a
on their
watermelon.
wallet. Remember that. They're meant to sit on their wallet. There's like an expectation there.
But if you go in and if I buy the same size skinny jeans in men's, their pockets are this big. Mine are this. Oh, but guess what? 2-year-olds' baby clothes have pockets with the hoodies.
Okay, so I've been researching that in my whole quest about sewing and what era did we sew different clothes and stuff. Women's clothes had pockets all the way up to the 19th century, 20th century, beginning of the 20th century. They were built into the dresses. Sometimes they were free-flowing pockets, like a belt with like a big pocket on it that you wore under your skirt, right?
And then your skirts would have like pockets over the layers, so where you could dig through the layers of your coats to get into your pockets.
Your petticoat could have a big pocket in it that you go through the layers. And I remember one video said you have to line up your petticoat pocket with the opening in your outer skirt so you can get to the pocket. But it also prevented theft too, having pockets under layers. But apparently those bum things, you know how like in some of the dresses in the Victorian era, they had the little standing out bum? Apparently sometimes that was a pocket.
But now we're pushed towards these bags. And I get it. I used to wonder, I was like, why do I carry a bag around all the time? Like, it's cute. It matches my outfit. Yeah, okay, whatever. But when I stopped carrying stuff and I just have my phone and my keys, I'm like, why can't I just take my phone and my wallet and my keys? And I'm like, oh yeah, because I have girl pants.
So I pose that we start dressing like 15th century ladies, right? Petticoat with a big pocket, another large pocket on a belt, and then that skirt, you know the skirt that's open in both sides and has ties on both front and back, and then you tie the front and the back and the back and the front, and then it's like it's like an envelope like this, so that the sides are open, and then you can stick your hands in your petticoat pocket. And then they had a little apron, so you can wipe your kids' faces with the apron, wipe your own face with it, wipe your hands with it, coronavirus with it. And and you know, that would make sense. Like, think about
all
it.
The world's
the
problems.
apron gets dirty. You drop it in the laundry, you grab another apron. You know what I mean? Like, seriously. Like, our clothing is not the most efficient clothing we've ever had in humanity's history.
You can tell what women value, because every time you compliment a woman on a dress and it's got pockets, bet your ass she's telling you that's got pockets.
It's got pockets.
It's like, it's amazing. It's got pockets. Look, I can fit my whole hand in there.
So moving towards equal rights when it comes to pockets. Or just make your own damn pockets and stick them on with a belt.
Well, I had this theory, and this is
good
totally
for your
a theory
great-great-grandmother.
This is totally a theory that I came up with when I was really reeling from my sexual assault and PTSD. And so I was very emotional. So I fully am aware that this could influence that. But I was really upset because I couldn't wear anything. I couldn't just have what I wanted on me. If I wore a skirt, I didn't have a pocket at all. That was the only thing that was comfortable. And I really started thinking about it, and I was like, well, maybe this is why purses are so like expensive, and why everyone is so gung-ho about going and buying a matching purse for each of her outfits, because we're expected to carry quite a bit. We're actually expected to carry, if you have children, oh man, you can't just carry your wallet, your phone, and your keys. Are you kidding? That's not going to work. Half the time I'm running somewhere and I got to grab my gym clothes, and I need my wallet. I need all the paperwork that I'm going to be doing today, my grocery list, my journals, a couple of pens. I carry around a quill and ink.
The thing is, if you made your own clothes, you would have a complete and total control on the amount of pockets and the size of them and which one holds a journal and which one doesn't. But because we were reliant on these mass-made atrocities that made of plastic, we can't have nice things.
Well, I tried taking home ec class, but all they taught me to sew was a little pouch.
Oh, and you know what else I discovered in my research is our great-great-great-grandmothers, they didn't have as much laundry because all they ever washed was undershirts, like petticoats, and an apron. They didn't wash their actual clothing because it was always covered with like light linens that were washed and got dirty by
and their
apron.
undergarments would have been protected the outer layer as well.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll sign up for that.
Okay.
Right? And so all they ever washed was light linens, white light linens. That's all they ever washed. All the colored, heavy, whatever, that didn't actually need to be washed because it was the way it was all set up. It all made sense. Oh, and those Norse aprons.
Sounds like some powerful women's stuff here.
Yeah,
So,
and the Norse aprons had these big buttons.
Equal rights here.
Well, it sounds like women's clothing used to be functional, and we've gotten away from that to it's just like
I'm pretty sure this is functional.
Decorative.
It's
functional for different reasons.
Pockets. The dress shop that I like going to, they have pockets now. They have dresses with big pockets, like you know,
Nice.
it'd be like come down, like deep ones.
Nice.
I'll buy one and I'll show it to you. You'll be like so proud of me.
You found a dress with a
Mike,
pocket in it.
can you help me, please? I need to like move the conversation on.
Heard the
I'm
cats,
getting
Mike.
wrapped up in it.
Heard
They're
the
wrapping me up in it. Come on.
Well, how do we get this back on to some kind of thing, discussion about rights and the equality of them? I guess I could say that, you know, obviously there's some differences, and how do we, either we take on these things as our own responsibility and as our own authority, or we're going to have the government and the state allocating this stuff. And is that really the way we want to go about it? Is there a way that we can kind of communicate what it is that we really want and need and how we can facilitate it without having to get it written in a book, you know, of law?
Yeah. Michael, I really appreciate what you just said. And in my corporate background, before I quit that world, it was always perplexing to me to hear about the distinction between men and women's pay. And for me, as a professional woman in the United States, I never felt as if I was being paid less than my male counterpart. And I'm probably going to ruffle a lot of people's feathers by even saying this. I was in the human resources organization. I saw what was going on. And what I came down to was that if women asked for what they thought they were valued, you know, what they thought their value was, they would very likely get that. So in my mind, it was much more an issue of communication than it was about rights or men just by and by being paid more than women for the same jobs.
So the women ask their husbands to call for them and ask for a raise?
That's a good question. Wives, in my experience, wives would call when there was an issue with their benefits, for sure, because they were very likely the ones that were more impacted on a daily basis by, you know, the medical coverage or the dental or whatever was going on, for sure. Again, I don't think that's necessarily a rights thing. I think it's about who's playing what role and how the communication happens.
I do remember being at IBM and finding out that the guy next to me was making like $1 or $2 more an hour. And I never, ever thought, oh, it's because I'm a woman. Never. I just thought, oh, shit, I didn't negotiate this perfectly. Like, he obviously is better at negotiating, and I have to figure out how he does that so I can do that next. And I did end up getting like a 10% raise after that, eventually, because I was like, no. Like, after I knew that he was making more, I was relentless. And I ended up making a lot more money when I got my 10% raise. But I had to fight for it, and it wasn't easy.
I find it interesting that the people, most of the people that I have encountered that talk about the pay gap, they think that it is their right to have equal pay, and it's their right to have someone else enforce that, but it's not their right. Like, it doesn't even occur to them that it's your right to go to your boss and say, I don't care if I'm a woman. I don't care, you know, if it's like unnecessarily discriminatory. I want equal pay, and you have to fight for it. That is your right to be able to fight for that. And it's also your right that if they're not going to give it to you and you don't like why they're not giving it to you, you get to leave. The medical case that you brought up earlier, it reminded me, and I can't remember where I heard it. I'm not even sure if it is entirely true. I think it was a personal story that I found in one of my groups on Facebook about a woman who went in to have a hysterectomy. That's the tubes tied, right?
No. Hysterectomy is when they remove the whole uterus.
They remove the uterus.
Yeah, they remove the whole uterus, the ovaries.
It was either getting her tubes tied or a full hysterectomy. I'm not sure which one it was. But it basically, she wasn't going to be able to have children afterwards. And the doctor refused to give her the procedure without the written or verbal consent of her husband. And when I first read it, I was horrified. I was like, this is not okay. But then it made sense to me. I was like, no, it's not okay that he's doing that, but that person isn't forced to stay with that doctor. If you're with a doctor who is not going to take your consent into consideration with your body, then you need to pick a different doctor, and that is your right. It's not your right to go and say, this doctor needs to be made to give me whatever medical procedure that I want under circumstances.
You know, that's something I often think about, those cake places. You know how a cake place is anti-gay people, and the gay people get all upset and they go to the news. Like, why don't they just go to the next cake place? Yeah. Like, when that happened to me, and like a doctor wouldn't give me birth control when I was young and I was on birth control, I didn't go to like somebody complain about his issues refusing to give me birth control. I just went to the next doctor and he gave me birth control. I was annoyed at the waste of time. I wished that they had told me ahead of time. But I guess I guess it depends on your perspective, right? Like if you're looking at somebody else to fix your problems, or if you're just going to fix your damn problems yourself.
And Agnieszka, I think that, at least those of us in North America have a lot more rights in terms of man versus woman than you're seeing in certain other countries, particularly in what we categorize as the third world, right? If we're in Morocco or Iran or Afghanistan, the experience is going to be very different. And those women very likely would not have any choice. And in fact, they probably wouldn't even be able to get to the doctor if they weren't escorted by a brother or a husband, right, or, an uncle. And so that's where I have so much compassion, because I've never lived through that. I don't even understand what it's like. I know it's there, but I mean, so for me, moving towards equal rights, it's in those places where the culture is just so different than what we are used to. And Deirdre, being in Australia, I'd love to hear what your perspective is. I imagine it's more in line with what we're used to in North America, but if it's not, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Which parts?
About actual human rights, between differences between men and women, between the actual sexes. Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know if that's still current, but I do know that when my mum wanted her tubes tied, she didn't want any more kids. She did need my dad to sign off on a document. This was 20 years ago now, to be able to do that. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure that's not current anymore. But I don't know. It's pretty much the same as the US. I have rights to my body. That's totally fine. 9-year-olds aren't being married off here, so that's kind of cool too. And see, this is the whole thing, issue that I had with the International Women's Day, is that there, I did a lot of research and looking on shows and everything, and they all of them seem to talk about only Australian issues. Oh no, there's women are being oppressed in Australia. Women are being oppressed in Australia. I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure I'm pretty fine here. But women in other countries definitely are, but that's never talked about. It's almost like there is actually a social ban on it, even on social media, that if you're not from that country, you can't actually talk about those issues. Mm-hmm. That's written in the agreements. So I don't know. But I do know what they do talk about. They're mad on it at the moment, is the Miss Monopoly. Have you guys heard of it?
No.
Okay,
Enlighten us.
Monopoly brought... Yeah, you're going to love this. So, Monopoly brought out a Ms. Monopoly. So, if you are a female player of the game, you instantly get $200 extra or $400 extra of your male counterparts. You get investment incomes as long as you're only investing on female investment in female inventions like cupcakes and handbags and perfume.
Oh. Wow.
I hate that. I hate that. I would never buy that.
Yeah, I kind of felt sick. I was watching it and I'm just like, through stuff.
You know how those priests in Poland were burning Harry Potter and Hello Kitty? I would like to burn that game. That reminds me of that Barbie. Remember that Barbie? That was like 20 years ago, I'm sure. I don't like math. There was a Barbie that said that, and it was like a big incident, and it was on the news and stuff. Of course, stuff like that, you can never look it up later because it disappears. But yeah, I do remember there was a Barbie, and it was a math incident.
That Deirdre's story reminded me of, I think it was a bakery or a restaurant, a little cafe, and they charged like 75 cents or 25 cents. It was something to equalize the pay gap, that men had to pay more. They're out of business now.
I would never go there. That is just so wrong. I'm pretty sure 2 wrongs don't make a right. Jesus.
that's the problem with like this push towards like bringing back femininity. I understand we need to bring it back. We need to take control back of our femininity, but doing things like throwing bleach on men's crotches and designing chairs so that they have to endure the same things that we were told. Ladies, how many times were you told by some adult in your life, close your legs, don't sit like that, sit like a lady?
I usually retaliate.
I experienced it.
I did too. I would sit and be like, no.
You're a Sagittarius, just like me.
But see that, well, this reminds me of what Amanda was saying with her when her husband was talking to her. Now, if he wasn't in tune with his intuition, if he wasn't in tune with his feminine brain, his femininity, he wouldn't be able to hold that space for her while she kind of just like melts down and cries because she just, shit just went wrong. He needs to be in tune with that so he can kind of flow with her.
Eric had a little hard time with that because he wanted to go to the fix-it mode. And I said, oh, when I'm doing something and you're confused, just give me a hug. And that's working really well because he doesn't go into fix-it mode. He just goes, oh, come here. And then he gives me a hug and then I inform him what I need next. Like, do I need it to be fixed or not?
Yeah, well, that is a way of fixing it. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
No, I'm just finding the beauty in the request and the very specific instructions. It's, again, that's another layer of nonviolent communication or empathic communication where, we need to take responsibility for what we want and what we need and making very clear requests by saying, for example, what you just said, like, I just would enjoy being heard. I don't want a solution. Why is it not okay for us to just be very clear with what we want?
It is. Of course it is. Besides, if you're going to live with a guy, why, so society doesn't give us, very good education on how to talk to the opposite sex. And, there's all this misinformation. Oh, men will never understand you. You just have to da. But in reality, we're all the same. So why wouldn't it be okay to say, hey, when I'm this type of crazy, this is the reaction I need, right? And he the same. Like sometimes Eric, when he's emotional about something at work, he's like, no, I just need to talk right now. Just don't interrupt me. I just need to talk. And then just talk. Why is it not okay to support your partner with exactly what they need? Why wouldn't it be?
And be respectful of their needs. Like if somebody's coming to you and they're saying, I just need this, be respectful for it. Don't kind of not give them that because that you want some type of manipulative power over them. Respect that they've honestly expressed from their heart that they are a vulnerable person and sometimes they just need to be held or listened to.
Yeah, because everybody's Deirdre, a 4-year-old.
And there are also some times when the receiver of that message isn't centered enough to be able to give that. And that's when it's okay to say, wow, I'm really hearing what you're asking. And I really want to be able to do that for you. And I can't right now. So, let's see if there's another way that I can help support you or, maybe we can reconnect tomorrow or something like that. That's when that radical honesty can come in when you just can't give it at that moment when they really need it the most because you're having needs that are just as urgent.
Yes.
And that doesn't happen that often. Usually it's much more of a more balanced give and take,
I love what you do there with your body. It's beautiful, that beautiful dance.
It's
like fluidity, you're going in water.
It's a give and a take. It's an ebb and a flow. It's never both at the same time because then you get crashing.
Exactly.
Yes.
You can't get anything through if you're crashing.
Yeah.
So I hate to bring the conversation to a slightly darker point because it is so lovely. One issue that I would be remiss on if I didn't touch on is women tend to go through a lot of trauma when it comes to the consent and the autonomy of their own bodies, specifically during childbirth in hospitals. Now that is it borderlines on rights, because you have rights to your body and they are not being respected. It is not a federal law, but sometimes it's a state law, so it does fluctuate into those rights. And it is something that women go through that men don't go through in the same way. Men don't have to have their bodies cut open because they have an emergency, or they're forced to push when they really shouldn't be pushing, and then have to get stitches because their body tore. It is different, and men do not go through that. But I think that is
or even having to lay flat, like and birthing is always, for me, it's been standing. If I kind of lay flat, it's actually more painful.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And that's because your hips tip back and the baby actually stops moving forward and tips back into your uterus. But the standard procedure is, well, I need to check up on you. So when I was, one of the times when I was at hospital, because I had to be, I had a lovely doctor. She was a New Zealand doctor, and she come in like every, like, I don't know, couple of hours, and she wouldn't even come in. She kind of like just slide the door open, and she like talked to my midwife. She's like, "Oh, how is she?" And they're like, "Oh, yeah, she's good." So, okay, I'll be back later, and close the door. But when there was a shift change, I had a very young male, I don't want to discriminate, I had a very young male doctor come in, and he came in, he like burst in. He's like, "I want you to get on the bed." I'm like, "I can't, I'm in the middle of a contraction." He's like, "No, what is she doing? Why is she not getting on the bed?" Looking at my midwives like I was the idiot, because I'm like having excruciating pain right now, and I'm not climbing up on it. Like I said, I'm a very small woman, and so I have to like physically climb up on these beds.
And talking about you while you're in the room, like you're not there. That's infuriating and that's so degrading. It
was degrading. It was awful.
Especially at that moment. Like this makes me very angry, because when I see anyone in a vulnerable position and someone is not even trying to take care, like, I understand if you've never been in this situation, you burst into the room and you see the look on their face and they're like, "I'm panicking," and they're like, "I may have done something. I don't mean to, but maybe I'm, need to learn." Just that not even listening to you and talking about you, like as if you're not even competent enough to understand the words that he's saying, so he has to go talk to someone else. It can mess with your head in such a vulnerable situation. I find it really, it's trauma. A lot of birth like that is traumatic.
Yes, it is.
Okay, ladies,
yes, it is.
I have something to say.
We can save that for Mother's Day.
How do you know I was going to say that?
I didn't. Yeah.
I was thinking that we should invite Lisa and Amanda for Mother's Day, and we should have these Mother's Day conversations in May about birth, because we're 10 minutes past the hour.
Are we? Oh, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't too sure what time we started. So I
guess it was 5 minutes later.
I did know that, but I felt like discussing birth trauma was such a big issue that you couldn't get off this call without me trying to mention. I would have yelled it in the outro.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to say thank you to Amanda Price for taking time out of our schedule for joining us at this event, and I hope that we can see her again for our Mother's Day event. So thank you, Amanda.
I would love that very much, and I've enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
Awesome, because we're so fun. So with that, next week Dennis is going to be hosting. Yay! It's been hard for me learning this whole hosting thing. He'll be hosting his own special event. So just a reminder of our times. We have Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern.
7:30. 7:30
Eastern. I said 7:30 in my mind, and then I read it as 7.
It's okay. I posted 6:30.
And people were late.
Oh, well, I'm glad they're so understanding of daylight savings.
We get people watching us after.
Yeah, I really feel for Dennis though, because it's like 2:30 in the morning for him when he joins the podcast at the moment.
No, it's 12:30 now. It's 12:30 now. It's gonna be 1:30 in April.
Yeah, I have no
us,
idea.
Half of us have changed with the daylight savings time. Deirdre never changes, and I believe Dennis will change in a month.
And that's why we moved to half hours to accommodate Deirdre's dropping of children at school in the morning in Australia, and Dennis, so that he doesn't have to stay up half the night. It's been a challenging daylight saving experience.
Look at all the work we go through to give you this.
We love you so much.
Our listeners hopefully love us too.
We're ending. Okay. We're going to end now.
All right, we're going to end. Oh, the outro. I have to do the outro. Bye.
You have to do the outro.
Bye. Bye, everybody.
Glad you came.